has been a long time coming, hasn't it? The advent of these EVs have thrown a curveball at us petrolheads, and they have improved to a point where you can no longer ignore them. And this one, especially the Ola S1Pro, has managed to grab my attention. This is my long-termer. I have been living with it for almost a month with the intention of understanding if all the problems which had plagued the S1 Pro at its launch have been taken out with the OS2 update. And to be fair, all the problems which people had mentioned in terms of the accidental actuation of the reverse gear or overheating, I've not faced any of those issues. If anything, only the sensor for opening the boot, it failed. But that again gave me an insight into how the after-sales service of Ola works, and I came back impressed because the service was swift. They came here, they changed the sensor, and I've had no problems with it whatsoever. If anything, this has been slowly but surely chipping away at all my skepticism and all the hoo-ha about the problems which had plagued it, to a point where I 100% prefer this over my Activa, which has served me loyally over the past 20 years without any problem. What has stood out is just how comfortable the S1 Pro is compared to the competition. There are very little vibes and barely any sound, which I love. Secondly, in terms of ergonomics, I'm 5'11" and I fit on it just fine. There's a decent amount of legroom even though the leg board is not flat. Also, the seat is nice and wide and well padded for the rider as well as the pillion. And of course, in terms of suspension quality, I think this is the best in business because you have really nice, supple, plush ride quality over broken roads. And at the same time, they also hold up really nice at higher speeds and give you really good support under braking, which of course brings us to the S1 Pro's trump card. Its 8.5 kilowatt motor and 58 Nm of torque are enough to propel you well over 100 kilometers an hour. And as scary as that sounds to be going that far on a scooter, the S1 Pro actually inspires a lot of confidence thanks to its balanced suspension, really potent braking system, and wide tires at the back and the front. And this performance is also backed by a really impressive range thanks to its 3.97 kilowatt hour battery pack, which takes about 6.5 hours to charge completely, and then is good enough to take you about 130 odd kilometers in the normal mode and 100 odd kilometers in the sport mode. What is even more impressive is that you can eke out the same range even when you are cruising on the highway as high as 70 kilometers an hour. All you have to do is just slot it in the cruise control mode, which can be activated up to 80 kilometers per hour, and just let the system do its magic, adjust the torque accordingly to help you eke out the best range. When you're riding around in the city, even with a pillion, you can still extract the same range as long as you're not going above 45 kilometers an hour. But then again, if you have all this power, why not utilize it, right? So in that case, when I was riding in the sport mode and the throttle was at its abusive best, I mean, the range just dropped by another 8 odd kilometers. And this was the same case even in the hyper mode, which is the most potent, which can propel this up to 116 kilometers an hour and has the best torque delivery when you get on the gas. Even then, the drop in the range was similar, only 8 odd kilometers. But then, after riding around in the city in the hyper mode, after 23 kilometers, it switched to the normal mode to prevent the battery pack from overheating. And I could only go back and ride in the hyper mode after about 15 odd minutes. Also worth noting is when you have only about 23 odd kilometers left in your range, then you're forced to ride in the eco mode, which is the least powerful, and you cannot go over 40 kilometers an hour. Also from the practical front, you get a massive 36-liter boot, which is big enough to swallow most of what you're carrying in the city, other than your full face ECE approved helmet. The seat height is also approachable at 792 mm despite its solid 165 mm of ground clearance. And also at 125 kgs, it's easy to manage and move around in the parking lot. The navigation too works really well, and you also get speakers to listen to your music on the way by connecting your phone to the S1Pro via Bluetooth. Now, as good as this all sounds, there's still a decent room for improvements as well, especially in terms of the throttle response. Because right now, the way this has been designed is to make this less intimidating. There's a small delay when you first crack open the throttle. And that in turn presents a unique set of problems because it makes taking quick U-turns a bigger chore and a more careful planned affair than it ought to be. Also, when you're riding it on an incline, the way this has been designed is no power goes to the rear wheel if you have your brakes on. You have to let go of your brakes completely before the torque can be transferred. And when you're on an incline, especially with the pillion, and you let go of the brakes and get on the gas, the delay is enough for the Ola to start rolling back, which can be quite scary. So that needs to be looked into. Secondly, I don't know why, I'm really surprised that the Ola doesn't get a standard trip meter, because the current one on this resets after every trip, which can get really annoying if you are trying to accurately chalk out how much distance you have covered and how much range you still have left. Also, to access really important information like how much battery you have consumed and how much the battery pack is heating up, you can only access it in the settings menu, which is only accessible when you're stationary and not when you're on the move. I think these are items which should definitely be accessible on the dash, always. I would also really like self-cancelling indicators because these buttons, there are quite a few of them and they are not placed where you expect to find them. So even after a month now, to switch off the indicator, I still have to look down, which is obviously not the safest thing. And also, I would like Ola to make better use of the regen. There's a big untapped potential to maybe extending the range even more if people have the option of choosing, how much regen they would like to kick in. And this is exactly why I'm really excited for the OS3 update from Ola, which is supposed to come in around Diwali, to see how many of these issues have been resolved or addressed in that update, because that's going to play a crucial role, especially with the state subsidies being taken away and the cost of the Ola S1 and S1Pro getting higher and higher, which now costs almost 1.5 lakhs on the road in Maharashtra. So keep an eye out for part 2 of this long-term review of the S1 Pro from Ola.